Alderperson Robinson.
Oh, you want to read this deal first?
Oh, I do have to read that, yep. This meeting will be conducted by audio and video conference without a physically present quorum of the Rock Island City Council due to the disaster declaration issued by Governor Pritzker. Because of this order related to COVID-19 health concerns affecting the state and the city, the mayor has determined that an in-person meeting at City Hall with all participants may not be practical or prudent. All the persons and staff may not all be physically present at City Hall due to the disaster, and physical attendance at City Hall may be limited. To participate remotely during the public comment or public hearing portion of the meeting, please join by phone at 1-857-285-3597, PIN 345-144852#.
Excellent. Roll call.
Alderperson Robinson.
Present.
Hurt. Gilbert. Swanson.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Poulos.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Mayor Tomes.
Here.
Very good. We will start with Mr. Miles.
Public comment.
We go, public comment. I apologize once again, but I don't think, anybody out there for public comment? I don't think here live.
Any public comment?
Is there anybody virtual? Hearing none, we will then move on to the agenda. Curliff, Miles. You might want to explain what Curliff stands for to people also.
Well, I explain it right there in the slide
do.
as it happens. Good evening, everyone. And Tara, are you on the call?
I am on the call and willing to answer questions should there be any. I'm sorry, I can't be with you in person.
No worries. So Tara Sipes, our Economic Development Manager, she is on the line. And so this presentation was originally going to be given primarily by her, but due to being out sick right now, she is not physically present. So let's get into it. So we're going to talk a little bit about some updates to the policies and procedures for our Commercial Industrial Revolving Loan Fund, otherwise known as CURLIF. So what is CURLIF? Where does this come from? So CURLIF is a self-sustaining economic development loan fund that was created all the way back in 1984, so this has been around for quite a while. And it was created with some seed money that came from HUD CDBG funds. So you often hear us talking about CDBG. It's thrown around left and right as many applications. This was one of them, okay? It is designed as a program to help fill that last bit of gap in a project. You'll hear us talk about that also. Oftentimes the assistance we're trying to provide is just enough to get you over the hump. Most of your funding's already lined up for the project or the expansion or the purchase, and you just can't find that last few dollars. That's when we come in. It's important to remember with CURLIF that because HUD touched it once, long ago, in its original creation, it remains a creature of HUD forever. This is very important because this is what brought about this need for the update, okay? So why did we do the update? HUD told us we needed to, and we do what HUD tells us. All right, so in evaluating the program as it had been operating for many years, it was discovered that there were a lot of things that were no longer in compliance. Big no-no. So the goal of the update is to make sure that it is in compliance with today's guidelines. Okay, so that's what brought this about. So if you're taking out a loan through CURLIF, what are the terms? So no loan may exceed 30% of your total project cost. All right, again, remember we're a gap funding tool. There must always be a 2-to-1 private to public funding ratio, kind of the same thinking, right, that gap. Interest rates are prime plus 0.25%, but no less than 2%, so we don't want to be giving money away for nothing, but we don't want to really hamper anybody either, so we want as reasonable a term as we can get. The term lengths are never longer than 10 years. It can be hard to track things if they go much longer. But if you are using the funds to get equipment for your business, let's say you need to cover the cost of putting a hood in a kitchen, for example, we lower that to 5 years, okay? Who's eligible? Well, you need to be a Rock Island business for one. Straightforward as it sounds, you have to be physically here inside of the city. You can't have a business based somewhere else that kind of sort of is in the city. You've got to be right here. The loan has to help create job opportunities for income qualified individuals. Again, HUD stuff here, okay? We need to make sure that if it was a HUD-originated thing, it's creating opportunities for the sorts of folks HUD is out there to help. So income-qualified people getting jobs, that's them being helped. They can't already have a CURLIF loan, so we don't allow anyone to do any double dipping into the fund. So if you've got one active right now, that's the one you got. It has to be a project or a business that's CDBG eligible. Long list of different eligibility criteria, but we have to fit you into one of them. And the projects can include things like property acquisition, rehabilitation, equipment, or working capital. So you've got some flexibility in what you can use it for. How do you apply for it? Well, pretty straightforward. You can contact anybody on the economic development team. So that could be Tara, it could be Stacy, it could be Liz. They've all got the same application forms, okay? You complete that application, you submit it for review. We make sure there's compliance with all of those HUD guidelines and everything else that has to do with the loan. We, of course, then send it on for underwriting review. So this is just to make sure that it makes financial sense to loan that entity money. We don't want to lend money to someone who has very low likelihood of paying it back. And then, of course, we want to make sure that this is given another look over, and then it's sent to the CURLIF committee. So what's the CURLIF committee? Well, the CURLIF committee is basically a body made up of experts who can look at these loans and figure out whether or not they make sense. So staff may have one view, but we're not bankers and real estate professionals and all the rest, right? So we bring those people on board to help give this one more look over. They then make decisions about whether or not the loan should be granted. The CURLIF committee is supposed to have delegated authority given to it by the council, and that should be codified in an ordinance. No such ordinance has actually ever been passed. This is the second part of what we want to address. So there needs to be an ordinance passed to officially delegate this authority that has been given, but never formally in the past. The committee is made up of people who are appointed and approved every 3 years, a rotating crew of folks. It has 5 members. It always consists of a council member, a representative from a bank or a lending institution, a CEO or a CPA member, a Rock Island business owner, and then a citizen with financial background. So again, having a nice group of people with different backgrounds who have the know-how and the common sense to say whether or not these loans make sense. Here are some examples of some different projects and businesses that have received CURLIF loans in the past. So it's a lot of familiar names. It's been an important tool in our economic development toolbox that folks have taken advantage of over the year. And it's been a sustaining part of a lot of the work that we have done for the business community here in Rock Island. So what are the next steps? What needs to happen now that I've told you all of this? Well, first, we need to bring those policies and procedures back to you so that you can vote on them and formally approve them. HUD has already gone through and given the green light on them, so we know that they'll comply with HUD. We also need to bring back to you an updated CURLIF committee ordinance so that you can formally delegate that authority to the committee. Again, they've been exercising that for years and years, but there's nothing on the book saying that you officially did that. So just making it formal. Once that's done, working with the committee, staff can really begin marketing the program in earnest and beginning to take applications. CURLIF has been on pause for quite a while we've been trying to get this sorted out with HUD. So staff's eager to get it up and moving again and get the word out that it's available for people to use. And then finally, we need to continue to do an assessment of some of the outstanding loans. So these are things that might date back 10, 15 or more years ago, and assess them to see if we can get folks on repayment plans, send them to collections. If unfortunately that seems to be the case, we need to do it, or write them off to help balance the books. So basically it's some bookkeeping stuff that needs to be taken care of. And before I take questions, Tara, is there anything major I missed or anything you'd like to add?
No, Miles, you did a very nice job at being a substitute. I think, this may be one of the questions you were going to ask, but John received an email from me late today with the policies and procedures version that has been approved by HUD and an updated copy of the application and kind of the process guide that is available for folks who are interested in the program. And so that will be sent to you, and you can review it and digest it and reach out with any questions you may have. There's a lot more to it than goes into this presentation. There's a lot more to it that goes in than what goes into the application and the guide. But this is essentially the spirit of what we can do. And then we dive into the HUD regulations and follow program guidelines to tell us how to do the rest of everything.
Yeah, that was a very good overview. Thank you, Miles and Tara. And tomorrow I will send out the detail on this. It is lengthy and very detailed, so if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out.
So I'm looking on the website now, and the members of the Curliff Committee all their terms have expired. So do we have anyone on the committee?
Yes.
Yeah, the
I
page is,
apologize.
Oh, yeah.
That's my fault. I was waiting until we had formal council approval to update everything on the website. That was a judgment call on my part, and I probably should have made a different one, sounds like.
so the
Well,
page is just not up to
The
date.
Curliff Committee has been meeting, once on a real regular basis, but they've been talking about helping build these rules. They've been used as consultants to help build the rules and regulations that we're talking about here, along with HUD, obviously. But they've been consulted along with unfortunately, about $1.5 million that is delinquent, and talking about, once again, collections and how to do it, and in some cases helped collect a few of those. And so they've been involved and had meetings sporadically for the last couple of years, actually, to help get this all reorganized. So
Yeah,
they have
and-
met, but not as applications and everything else.
Right. And again, we view them as expert advisors to staff. So, we don't do anything just because we think we should do it. We try to go to the experts and get their input. So they've been a part of this process as we've gone through it.
Okay.
Is it the same members, or is it different than what's on here?
You'd have to read it. I
roll
don't
over?
know. It should be the same, do you know?
They should be
Yeah, I
the
don't have it
same
in front of me.
members.
Okay.
It's the
Thank
same
you.
members?
Okay.
I didn't look on the website, so I don't know.
No, you're
who's
good,
there.
you're good.
But if you got
It's-
like a Joni and
Yeah,
my
it's
brother
Joan-
Tom.
Joan Dean, Lawrence Davis,
Lawrence.
Yes,
you.
Okay.
yes. Then it's those, then that's the group.
All right, thank you.
Brandy
Once
Sandoval.
once everything's approved, obviously that whole page will be updated to reflect the new policies, procedures, and have the new app on it and all the rest.
Okay. I was just curious who was on it. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
create a.
No,
Yeah,
that's fine.
And
if you look at, to be very frank and honest with the council, if you look at any random page of the city website, you'll probably find something staff should update on it. We try as hard as we can to keep abreast of those and keep them up to date, but there are a lot of web pages, so.
Just an FYI, related to this, there's Bi-State Regional Commission, which we're a member of, also has a revolving loan program. Actually, two different ones. Some of it funded through different organizations or different regulations to theirs, but can be added on top of. It does not have to be one or the other. So there is developers or entrepreneurs or whatever you want to have two avenues for a low-interest revolving loan program that they can actually add on top of each other.
And the economic development team, obviously when they meet with anybody who's looking for assistance, the goal to the greatest extent possible is to help that person get a layer cake of assistance, right? So to kind of put all of this stuff that is available to that person one on top of the other to get them to where they need to be.
And it can be used as capital. If you go to a bank, conventional bank for a loan, and they look at how much capital is put in or how much equity, this can be considered equity into a project.
In full transparency, I got a Curliff loan, so it's a wonderful
I
tool.
didn't want to
and-
point that out.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
anything.
Well, I got one at TPC. When we built in
Yeah, I
'93,
mean, absolutely.
we had one out there. So
How many applicants, or have you been having conversation? I mean, do you have people in the pipeline that
Oh, Tara, do we know, do
genuinely
we have a
want to
waiting?
use this?
Yeah, do we have a waiting list at this point?
Because
We've
it is a
had
great
many
tool.
inquiries, but we do not currently have a pipeline. I have a couple people who have most recently talked to us about it. The economic development team will be rolling out marketing for this program including reaching out to those who have expressed interest in the past. As the mayor mentioned, we have the Bi-State Revolving Loan Fund available to us. We also have partners at Bridge Development, or Bridge Investment, excuse me, I always do that to them. Bridge Investment Community Development Corporation. And then we have access through Central States to some new market tax credit loan pools. The state of Illinois also has an Advantage Illinois loan program, and we have representatives at DCEO that we speak to about that program regularly, vetting projects to see whether or not they're good fits. So we talk to them, and then a couple of our local lenders have come out with some sort of lower barrier to entry programs for small businesses. So each project is a little different, as you all know, being in business or just being personal borrowers. So it's a lot of navigating through projects to find the different unique characteristics that make them eligible for one or the other.
These are designed to be also revolving loans to higher risk projects than a bank, a typical bank. So the standards are a little less than what you'd see if you went to a bank and got conventional loans and everything else. Still has to be underwritten and reviewed and everything else, don't get me wrong. One of the problems we had before, we weren't doing that, but but to let you know that it is. But at the same token, they can't be high risk. I mean, for example, it is a lot more difficult if you're opening a restaurant or a bar to get these, because those are one of the highest failures of businesses. And so several of the loans, and these people that look at this is kind of like, now we're not going to use it for those, in which there's been a lot of inquiries on that end of it, those type of business. And so.
And since it is community development block grant, there are a couple different avenues, and obviously we didn't go into that in this presentation. It may not be 100% evident in some of the documents that John has, but there is what we call a micro enterprise loan, which is for a smaller business. Oftentimes those are startups. It has a different set of regulations that govern what you can do with that money. And then there's a presumed area benefit, which is in regard to service delivery to income qualified individuals, which allows us a little bit more flexibility. But staff has to assess that in comparison to the guidelines. So those things there. Sorry, Alderman Robinson.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. I just wanted to know, do we have individuals who actually default on the loans? And if we do, how do we handle that?
So we're working on that right now. So we have gone through and put together a spreadsheet, and by we, I really mean just Tara, working very hard, has put together a spreadsheet where we've evaluated folks who have not made payments in a very long time. There's a lot of reasons why that might be. So in some cases, it's because a business has gone bankrupt or otherwise, gone defunct, no longer exists. There's other folks who we need to reach out to because for one reason or another, staff has not done the work of keeping in touch and needs to follow up with them about, hey, been a while since we got a payment. We got to get you onto some sort of repayment plan. So we are working on a strategy for addressing folks who are in different states of non-payment and hope to move forward soon getting that addressed.
That has been an area of little weakness on documentation with that. Mm-hmm. Some we have personal guarantees, some we do not. Some we have where you can go back and put a lien on things, some we do not.
And that's been the challenge, and one of the things that these new policies and procedures are meant to help address. So if so that everything's treated the same, and in the future we won't have these problems again.
And anything a little older than 10 years typically runs the statute of limitations that you can't really do much with.
Right. So we might write something off, but if there is a lien in place, we'll never release it. So, we might do what we can to keep the bookkeeping a little more sensible. But if someone owes us money and there's a way to collect, we will seek to collect.
I guess.
And as for those people who are just moving forward from this point, on page 23, when you open the policies and procedures, you'll see the process that we have put in place and has been approved by HUD. So if someone does fall behind, the first contact will come from staff. If they get, if If they get further behind, they will be referred to the city attorney. They'll get a letter from them if they're 60 days past. And then if there's no action there past 90 days, we will accelerate further, potentially sending to collections.
On this subject, while I appreciate all the work that staff has done on the CURLIF program, and I recognize the benefits that the program has had over the decades, you are employed in the Community and Economic Development Department. You are not professional bankers. You know, this is not your realm of professional expertise, not you specifically, personally, Miles, but, I mean, it probably is the case that you're
If
not
I
a
come off as
financial
a
expert.
banker, I feel pretty good about it.
But also just simply the nature of your profession. You're a planner, right? And I love planners, but you're not bankers. And I think the history...
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah. I think the history of this program with $1.5 million in delinquencies demonstrates that updating the policies and procedures, I'm skeptical that it will, in the long term, in another 40 years, will not result in another situation like we have here today. As you have heard me say many, many times, we're really good at like, oh, something's in crisis, let's put attention to it right now. But then a few years goes by, somebody quits or gets replaced, and oh, Sammy used to do that, and now Sammy's not here anymore, and sort of just the nature of things, it gets dropped. And I'm sure that in 1984, when we have some of these delinquencies, there was somebody who was responsible for following up with them, but it just, by the nature of things, stopped happening. To that effect, would it be a wiser choice for the city to explore some sort of public-private partnership with a banking institution to basically say, hey, here's some money from the city. You are bankers, use this as some sort of program to help Rock Island-based applicants so that your general application is this standard, but if it's a Rock Island-based company, then it's this slightly easier standard or something like that. I know that there's loan guarantee programs. Some states have guarantee programs. If the business bails on their loan to a private banker, the state picks up the slack, et cetera. There's other programs out there, I guess, than having planners operate like bankers. I guess, what is currently funding this CURLIF program? Is it still CDBG money?
So there's a little CDBG always in the mix, and as far as HUD is concerned, if there's a little, it might as well all be.
Oh, yeah.
As a revolving loan fund, as people pay back into it with interest, that's what keeps it revolving.
Right.
Tara, I don't know if you want to touch on the partnership point, or if you'd like me to.
Well, we have explored that extensively, but I feel a cough coming on, so Miles, take it away.
So first of all, this program is not run specifically by me,
Sure.
but overseen by Tara. And again, there's the CURLIF committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which has basically bankers on it.
Sure.
So it's-
Volunteer bankers that serve, 3 years and then they're done.
They're not done. They can be reappointed multiple times.
My point is, there's a bit of a difference between a CURLIF committee member and somebody whose job it is to work at a bank and do underwriting, and if they result in $1.5 million of delinquencies,
Right.
that person's probably going to lose their job.
So remember,
There's a big difference.
there's multiple steps here that were not always in place.
Correct.
So first off, there is the underwriting part, which wasn't always in place. So that's step one.
Right. Sorry to interrupt you, who's doing the underwriting now? You said an external underwriting review?
Tara, I think you can answer that.
Yes, sorry, thank you for covering for me there for a
No,
moment.
it's okay.
As the application comes in, the intake will be done by economic development team members. So Liz, Stacy, whoever is interacting with that potential borrower, they'll make sure that the application is complete, that the project is feasible from an economic development standpoint. Then it will come to me, if I'm working with them, we'll work on this as well, to make sure that it is in compliance with HUD guidelines, that it meets the program requirements. Then, as part of our program money, we can hire a third-party underwriter to review that. We have an underwriting guide, but as you have said, Alderman Parker, I am not a banker, so I am following the guide. We will send the packet of information from my review from the application to that third-party underwriter to make sure that from a financial perspective, that application makes sense. Then that underwriting recommendation, my recommendation based on programmatic adherence and the application itself that includes a business plan, property appraisals if property acquisition is on the table, all that stuff, will go to the CURLIF committee for review. And then those folks will listen to a presentation from the borrower and make a decision one way or another on that application.
So to your
But
specific.
but we do have a relationship with American Bank. And they, all the payments are made to American Bank, reminders, and Mr. Healy could speak about this probably even better, that American Bank handles the paperwork on it.
I pay American Bank. Everything goes through them. That's who I've had the relationship with, and, without any issues.
So to your specific question about who will the underwriter be, we have yet to hire someone,
Okay.
but we have plenty of options.
Sure, no problem. I guess,
I would hate to see a tool taken away from economic development.
well, I'm not necessarily saying that we should take a tool away. I'm just saying we should give people who are better at this job
I
a tool.
agree with that.
Versus CED, no offense. But it's like asking Public Works to go fight fires or something, right? I just don't think it's in your wheelhouse, and it's a great tool to have, but is the program necessarily being administered by CED necessary? Have you spoken to HUD about just running the CURLIF program through Bridges Investment or American Bank or something like that?
We
Does
have.
HUD have any guidance on public-private partnerships like that?
It is an acceptable way to move forward. However, the mayor and Colleen and I went to Chicago to speak to HUD, and we're very excited about potentially allowing one of our CDFI partners to take over the program. However, a few of the items we understood would be resolved, some of the outstanding issues would be resolved by allowing a CDFI to take over administration of the program, we learned would not actually be resolved. So as HUD money comes in, it's subject to timeliness. We can only keep a certain amount of the money that we get. Allowing this money to be used in an account by a bank partner would not take that timeliness measure off of our books. We would still be tied to that. There were a couple other things, and I'm sorry, I'm being distracted in the background here, but there were a couple other things that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I feel like there were 3 things that we thought would be fixed that would not be fixed by that.
So, because I take the point seriously, but I also want to be respectful of the time that we have here. And I have a guest from Moline who I'm sure I will make answer questions about the land bank. What I certainly can work with Tara on is perhaps a small memo that lays out kind of how we looked at that question,
Sure.
kind of how we decided to take the path we have, and sort of lay out our reasoning and some of the concerns we have about that.
You do lose a little bit of flexibility. You hire the underwriting separate, but if you have them administrate the whole thing, you lose your board, and, which is not the end of the world, but you lose some flexibility of being able to work on higher risk. Once I talked about restaurants and bars and everything else, we have the ability to say, yes, we want to do that. Where they were going to take more of a banking role and be stricter, and the downside of that being too strict is, then they might as well just be a bank. And we're not serving the purpose of what this is designed to do, is to be loaning money at a higher risk type of operations to help people get started.
Yeah.
And so you lose a little bit of that flexibility.
The main thing I want to emphasize is that we did look into doing that.
Yes.
And so we weighed different factors to decide to not do it. But we can certainly put that thinking into writing if that would help kind of answer some of the questions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I do want to point out that, to the greatest extent possible, the CED department tries to partner with others and bring in assistance from elsewhere.
Right.
With the self-awareness that we can't do everything, or maybe not the best person to do something.
Right.
So points taken.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize, I know you want to round it up, but the issue is, this is self-funding. And so there's no new monies put into it. HUD does not put any more. It is strictly people paying it back, and the interest and that sort of thing sets it up to either grow or be allowed the same amount of money to be loaned back out. We typically been at the 4 or 5% interest. Just let you know, it can take it down to 2. but at the same token, you got to take into account some bad debt, and to be able to continue for this to grow, because once the pot's empty, it's empty. It was a special program. It requires it to be self-funded.
And I think there's that personal aspect too. You touch on the bank, with it becoming a bank, you know, you're growing up and you have all those relationships with CED to that certain, you know, characteristic there. So I know with me, there was that aspect to it too.
Yeah, and maybe just real quick to wrap up, we'll make sure that we get you the pros and cons and what we've done in the past. I can also let you know that we've looked at other areas where the city provides some assistance, and we're approaching this more in a reimbursement versus here's your money, to ensure things that are done correctly and completed before reimbursements are given. So
Sure.
we're on the same wavelength.
All right. Moses, did you have anything? And
Yeah, yes, just one quick thing. So with the debt that we currently have, does that prevent us? And I know you said it's been in a hiatus for a while because of trying to get all this stuff lined back up. But does that prevent us from offering as many loans as we would like to, because we have people who are just not paying it back? Since, Mr. Mayor, I think you said that this is like a one-time deposit. So the money that we get back from payments allows us to continue with the loans. Is that correct?
So there's still money in the pot, and there are many people who are making their regular payments. So there is money there to lend. So the short answer is no. Doesn't prevent us from moving forward, but obviously we want to get back the money that we're owed. That expands the pot and expands opportunities for future lending.
we also have set limits to how much we'll loan, so we can try to give it to as many people as possible. So somebody can't come in and take $100,000 or $200,000 and take it, what's left, and we don't have smaller ones. So we have put limits on that. But there is money in the pot currently, and we hope to still collect some of the bad debt, but there's a good chance that you're going to have $1 million plus written off. That would have been in there, would have been nice, but it isn't. It's too far gone.
Yeah, I just hate to know that I don't know the intentions of some of the people who are, those who are in debt, but, I hate to have people just take advantage of the program. And then that hurts someone else to be able to qualify and have that money extended to them.
Staff feels the same.
Yep.
We concur. And as I know, probably almost as well as anyone on staff, this is a really complicated scenario. Making sure you're in compliance with all the regulations, and there are so many variables. But if you have someone in your ward that you're talking to that you think might be a good potential borrower, please feel free to refer them to the economic development team. We're going to have a basic screener that we can walk through with them, so they don't have to fill out the entire application to find out whether or not this would be a CURLIF eligible project.
If there are any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. But if we may, I would love to move on to the next presentation about the land bank.
Do.
All right, so switching gears here. Going to talk to you a little bit about a proposal to establish an Illinois Quad Cities regional land bank. Okay, so this is a collaborative effort with the City of Rock Island, Moline, and East Moline. And what we're trying to do is address some problem properties in our respective cities. So this is a conversation that has been going on for many, I can't even remember how long. 11 months, yeah, nearly a year. And it was initiated when the City of Moline, represented by the ever-capable KJ Whitley behind me, applied to IDA for a grant to do a feasibility study. That feasibility study obviously showed that establishing a land bank would be feasible. So we moved on from there, contacting a lot of the different communities on this side of the river, having different conversations with them about their issues with nuisance properties, vacant land, and the like, and getting a sense of what their interest might be in participating in some joint effort to address those issues. Over time, it appeared that Rock Island, Moline, and East Moline were the communities that were most interested in moving forward on this. So what exactly are we trying to address here? I mean, in short, blighted properties. You've heard me talk about vacant lots, ad nauseum probably. We have all seen properties like this. They're sitting empty, they're sitting boarded, they're sitting deteriorated, they're bringing down property values, they're posing a fire hazard. They are weakening our neighborhoods and our community, but they're very difficult to address. It's not easy to address these. They often have all sorts of weird problems. Who owns them? Not always the easiest thing to figure out. Lots of liens, back taxes. What private investor are you going to partner with who wants to take on those risks? Huh? How are you going to get a hold of them and get clear title to them? Nobody wants to take on that kind of liability or those concerns. So this is an issue that many communities really struggle to address. So what's a land bank? What is this tool that we think might be of help here? Well, really simply, a land bank is an intergovernmental agency that can take properties like this, so vacant lots, abandoned houses, anything that's tax delinquent, and turn them around, okay? It can take acquisition of them through foreclosure, more often tax auction, and get clear title, all right? Can wipe the slate clean of back taxes and eliminate these liabilities that make it really tough for other people to turn these properties into something more productive. So the benefits of a land bank is that it can help take these things out of the limbo of blight and abandonment and move them over into the possession of other parties that can turn them into something worth having. Something that generates tax revenues, improves property values, and helps the neighborhoods that they're in. It eliminates an issue which we've kind of hinted on in different presentations and reports to the council in the last few years about tax auction profiteers who might buy the taxes on a property in year 1 and year 2 and in year 3, and then in the final year 4 declare sale in error, get their money back plus a little interest, right? They have no interest in the property actually ever getting turned around or improving. They found a way to make money at our community's expense. A land bank can help us move around those folks. It also offers the opportunity to access additional resources and development options that we may not have as an individual community, right? That could be as straightforward as we could apply for a grant, they can also apply for the same grant. We couldn't have gotten all that money together, but we each got it and we can pool it, right? Might be that they're able to take advantage of other resources that cities wouldn't be able to. They can also run programs that individual cities may not have the time or the capacity to run on their own. An example might be that they do a pairing program where you have the land bank and a set of small house rehabbers, and the land bank can take properties that were abandoned, pass them along to those small rehabbers, and get the houses turned around in a way that wouldn't be as encumbered as it might be if the city's doing it with some of our many strings attached funding sources, right? What's the governance structure of these land banks? There's a handful of them around Illinois, so this wouldn't be the first one by a long shot. And they're all basically structured this way. There's an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement that the participating cities sign, and it lays this out, okay? It usually is the case that there is a board made up of representatives from each of the participating communities. And it's that board that helps set the policies and objectives of the land bank, kind of similar to the way a city council might. It hires a land bank manager who is then sort of the staff for the land bank, right, handles the operations. In the conversations we've been having with this proposed land bank, the best arrangement for this that we've come up with is that the land bank manager would be an employee of Moline so that he can get good pay and good benefits. But that person would still be answerable to the board, okay? And if in questions there's any interest in learning more about that, KJ behind me can talk a little bit more. The manager would be overseeing kind of day-to-day operations, reporting to this board, trying to reach, compliance with their policies and achieve their objectives. And then this is very important. Activities in a given city don't go forward if that city doesn't want that activity to take place. So in the IGA, every community has a veto vote. What would that look like? Let's say the Land Bank Board is considering a project in Rock Island. Let's say I'm the city's representative on that board, and I have a really good reason that I don't want it to go forward. The other two communities could really want it to happen. I can say no, and it dies right there. So none of the communities give up that authority to decide what happens within their own borders, okay? So we're not giving anything up in this arrangement. Kind of giving you an example of another land bank that's out there. This is the Northern Illinois Land Bank Authority. It covers Winnebago and Boone counties. That's Rockford right there in the middle, and its adjacent municipalities. In their case, it's run by their bi-state regional commission equivalent, the Region 1 Planning Council. It just so happened in their case that made a little bit more sense for their funding structure. But they provide land bank services to that whole area. If you go onto the Region 1 Planning Council's website, which is also the Land Bank's website, they include things like this: a tool for identifying properties that are for sale, either at tax auction from their county governments, kind of like you'd see here, but also the properties that the land bank has purchased and is looking to get back into productive use. This is something at this point in time that we don't have the capacity to do, but would be a good thing for the land bank to take on. Here's a news story about one of the first properties that the Northern Illinois Land Bank took on. If you follow the link, you can watch a little news story on it. I encourage you to do it. Basically, what they did in the case of this duplex, which had been sitting vacant for, I think, nearly a decade, blighting the neighborhood it was in, they used a judicial deed to take possession of this abandoned property. A judicial deed, by the way, is where you use your authority as like a government entity to go to court and say, nobody owns this, and there's a problem, and I want possession of it so I can solve the problem. So it's a process you go through in the courts. Through that, they were able to clear all the back taxes, and then they were able to sell the property for $20,000, and this is the important part, this is the kicker, with a deed restriction that ensured that if the person buying it didn't do an appropriate rehab of the property, the house or the duplex would revert to the possession of the land bank. It's the little clawback that they'll include in these arrangements, okay? This is the kind of stuff that a land bank will specialize in doing, kind of making sure that properties get actually put back into productive use. What's the financial structure of something like this? How does this get paid for? So the different land banks have started up in slightly different ways, depending a little bit on the circumstances of their areas. So some of them have got startup grants. Some of them have started with almost no money and slowly tried to make money through property sales. In our case, what we want to do is seed it with startup money right at the get-go, all right? So the participating communities would contribute startup costs based on population size, and then we would work forward over a 4 to 5 year period for the land bank to become self-sustaining. So this is kind of similar to Curliff, right? It's supposed to be a self-sustaining, revolving thing, all right? So property sale revenues would be a part of that. Any grants that the land bank may apply for, and obviously would be encouraged to apply for, as well as any sort of additional service fees for any special projects it might take on, right? So a participating community may contract with the land bank to do something in addition to its normal services. For example, we might contract with them to target specific properties that we really want to prioritize for redevelopment, or acquire a specific set of vacant lots to give back to us for a project. So stuff like that. Another thing that has come up in our discussions about establishing a land bank is that Rock Island has a more specific ask than Moline and East Moline has. Something from the land bank we'd really like to get help with that the other communities don't need as much help with. It's an issue near and dear to my heart, as you all know, and that is the large volume of vacant lots that the city owns. We own a lot. We own many more than our neighbors do. And so one of the things after the land bank would be established that city staff here would like to do is negotiate out a memorandum or a service agreement that didn't increase the amount we needed to pay towards the startup costs, but prioritized our share of the land bank's work to focus on helping us market the vacant lots we already own so that we can sell them off a little bit more quickly and efficiently. So the idea here would be that we're basically just saying, we'd really, really like your help offloading this liability. We really, really want to get these back onto the tax rolls. And that's kind of the first priority we would want help with. I do my best, but I only have so much time. I could use a little backup on this. As those sold off, by the way, of course, we'd be able to kind of reposition sort of what their work was about and switch to other stuff. So, where does the money for our share of the startup costs come from, and how much money is that? Well, our share is calculated out to about $36,571. But our good friends in Moline recognize that that might be money we didn't include in our budgeting. It's taking a long time to have this discussion about the land bank. So Moline has agreed for both Rock Island and East Moline to help front these costs and has built that into their own budget and is asking to be paid back at a later time. And there's a few ways we could do that. We have them ranked here in order of preference. IDA has a land bank capacity program offering grant dollars to help in these efforts. IDA is pushing for communities across the state to band together and create these land banks because IDA sees it as an effective tool in furthering the good of our communities, okay? So there's money on the table from them to help pay for this. This is the same source of money that paid for that feasibility study that Moline did in the first place. An important thing to note here is that each community who participates in this work, plus the land bank itself, can apply for these same grant dollars, so we can all layer them together, all right? We could, of course, also look for money within our existing budget. We could mix and match from a few different sources, as always, and find something that would work through a combo. And then, of course, ARPA is always on the table as part of our ongoing discussions around that. So what are the next steps with this? So there is a IGA that has been prepared that we can share with all of you. Our hope would be that if you're in favor of this, this is something that the council would be comfortable approving in February. Once that's approved, we would be able to move forward with that application to IDA to see what kind of grant dollars we could get to help pay for our share. If awarded, we would obviously pay back Moline for those funds. And then if not awarded, we'd look at some of those other options. Again, I want to emphasize here the collaborative nature of making this work and the desire between the different participating communities to find a way to do this without creating any new financial burdens for the participants, all right? So the goal here is not to just add one more bill. The goal over time, in fact, is to increase our property tax revenues and the value of our properties. This is a long game. So to sort of sum it up, the land bank would help us deal with a lot of the problem properties that we have, giving us some long-term advantages we don't have now. Over time, it would become self-sustaining, much like the Curliff Fund itself. It would generate its own revenues and eventually cover its own work. And it's our recommendation that an IGA be approved and that we be granted permission thereafter to go after those IDA grant funds. And at this point, I would love to take questions, and I know my compatriot from Moline, KJ Whitley behind me, would also be happy to help answer some of these questions, given that she and I have been talking about it now for so long. So
I do have one. So say we move forward with this, and the land bank helps us in Rock Island get rid of some of our properties. So say we sell a property that the city owns. Do we get paid? I mean, how does that payment work? Does the payment come to us for the property?
So the current discussion, or what we have discussed is help with the marketing of it. But it would still be me selling it to whoever, and all of the same money that we would normally get, we would get.
Okay, so then none of that money would go back into the self-sustaining part of the land bank?
We could arrange it that way if there was a desire to do it. But
Okay.
at this time, there's no requirement that we would do it that
Okay,
way.
because I mean, I'm just thinking of, the money that we would apply for the grant, if we don't get the grant and all
Yeah.
of that, if a percentage of the property would go
I'm
back
perfectly open to that idea. I have no
to help
objection
pay
to it.
that
City back.
Yeah.
as an alternative.
It would just be,
funding.
it would just be something that we would want you all to be comfortable with. Because otherwise, that's revenue that goes back into the city itself, right?
Right.
So if that was
Gotta
a
be. If we don't
part
get that
of how
grant.
we wanted to make a match, we could
Money.
certainly do it.
Okay.
I have a question about the management aspect of it. It said that it's going to be a City of Moline employee, correct? So my question and the concern I would have is, the initial funding, it looks like, is $100,000. So is that employee, where are they taking their salary from? Are they taking it from that $100,000? Because if, say, it's a $50,000, $60,000 a year employee, half of your money is going towards salary rather than actually doing something that's
Okay, you're correct.
relevant.
For those who don't know me, I'm KJ Whitley. I'm the Community Development Program Manager, excuse me, for the City of Moline. Miles and I have been working on this project for about 11 months with Annika Whiting from East Moline, and then our consultants. So that's a very good question. So the employee, the land bank manager, will be an employee of the City of Moline, but they report to the board. It's kind of like a Main Street manager. You might be a City of Moline employee, but you have a board that you report to, and you follow their policies and procedures. So we're just housing that employee. Right now, they're going to be housed tentatively in the Community Development Department in our division. We're giving them a space and the hardware and the software to kind of run this program. With that being said, we have a budget that it's based on population, how much everyone puts in. So I think Rock Island's a little less than Moline, and then East Moline is about half of what we're paying. We're taking the front seed money, when this came about, we're taking it out of ARPA. ARPA's given us about $250,000 that we're throwing into the land bank immediately. One of the challenges that the other land banks had, they didn't have the money to really start the program. And so once you're in the red, it's just hard to come out. So we thought that was important, and we ran that past our city administrator and our council, and they gave us $250,000 out of the ARPA money. And so the other cities would pay us back. But we have a budget for that position. I just don't know what that salary is going to be, because I've written a job description and I've submitted that to our HR department. I'm waiting for them to factor it. Once they factor it, then we can put it out on the streets to get hired. I think Miles is planning on bringing this back on February 14th, and we're piggybacking on you guys, because on February 15th, I hope to have it on Moline's agenda for final approval to move forward. As you know, with Moline and Rock Island and Davenport being entitlement communities, we've been doing land bank tasks for, 48 years since we've been getting CDBG in one way or another. Then when we got the Neighborhood Stabilization Program in 2008, 2009, again, a lot of acquisition, a lot of demolition, a lot of rehab, a lot of new construction. We were doing those activities with that $18 million that the Quad Cities got. This is just another opportunity for collaboration for us to move it forward. And we would like to continue to do that, because, still to this day, East Moline and Rock Island and Moline are fortunate to have a CD department who are doing housing tasks, where East Moline does not have a housing department. So we have opened it up to all the Illinois Quad Cities, and I can tell you where we're at. Since East Moline took it to their council last week and got it approved, I've heard from the media, they want to do a story on it, but I just don't know where everybody's standing on it right now. Rock Island County has reached out to me, as well as the city of Silvis. We're having a meeting with them on Thursday with our consultants to kind of explain to them about the land bank. So even though these 3 cities will begin the land bank, other cities can join, and then that dollar amount will be repositioned based on population.
Great explanation. I fully support it myself. I think it's great collaboration, great deal. But really, still answer it, the $240,000 ARPA money that they've loaned to this, or is it loaned to this deal and has to be paid back to the city of Moline to be used someplace else?
Well, I think your cost, once it's paid back to us, we'll take it out and give it back to finance, and they'll repurpose that portion of the money.
Okay. So $37,000, I think I'm with you. The $37,000 we pay, it pays the salary and everything else, but is Moline, and I don't want to sound this negative, making money on it, or just repaying back? What, are we paying just the cost and break even type of a situation?
Well, I think
I
one
don't
of
know,
the,
Bill, if that answers yours, but.
I'm sorry, I think one of the things that Miles talked about doing was like a service agreement. He wants us to help more, well, he wants the land bank manager to help more with the marketing of their properties.
Right.
Where other cities, taking it from A to Z. So you guys have a different use for the land bank manager than East Moline and Moline probably.
I think it's the funding of the land bank manager. I think that's my question. Who is actually paying this? Are we as a city, basically, we're in for, out of the 100,000, we're 36,500, so we're 36.5%. Are we responsible as a city for 36.5% of X salary, is my question.
And I wish I'd have bought that. I can look it up on my phone real quick. I didn't bring, because we have a budget that we came up with, I don't know, probably about 6 weeks ago that we all agreed to. And even with the IGA, your attorney, our attorney, and East Moline's attorney has been with these virtual meetings that we've had every 2 weeks. And I think the IGA has probably been redrafted probably about 4 or 5 times, because we all had some concerns like that. But for the salary costs, I mean, you're paying for different aspects of that. And in that cost, it's also, okay, so many demolitions, so many rehabs, so many maintenance of the properties. Miles gave me a list of 200 properties? 200 properties just for Rock Island alone. I mean, we have to hire an attorney. We have to hire a maintenance company to maintain those, so your Public Works Department's not maintaining those, and our Public Works Department is not maintaining them. So, I mean, some of that cost will go there, too.
Oh, I understand. It just doesn't seem like a lot. I know that sounds dumb to say, but $36,500 to fund all of this just doesn't seem like a lot. You see where I'm going?
I hear what,
We'd have to see the budget, I guess.
dropping my clicker, KJ, geez.
You're
Yeah,
fine.
that's the first year cost. That's our contribution the first year. So
that's
that budget that KJ is talking about can be shared with the council after this. We wanted to introduce the concept first so that you kind of understood what the context of the budget was. So we can share that, but it basically shows that 4 to 5 year transition period with the startup costs high at the beginning, decreasing over time as the land bank gets revenues in.
Yeah.
So you can see that spreadsheet, sort of how that transition is made.
Moses, do you got any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So Miles, I love the idea of the program, but from what I'm understanding or what I'm hearing a lot of the positives. What are the concerns with this type of program?
What are the concerns? The major concern is the self-funding element. So getting the land bank to a point where it is able to do self-sustaining work. When we've talked with the folks who work at other land banks across the state, that's one of their big hang-ups. But then it also depends a little bit, on where they're actually operating, so the actual region they're in, what sort of grants they're able to gain access to, and what kind of communities they serve. KJ pointed out that here we've got Moline and Rock Island, both CDBG entitlement communities, so we're pretty familiar with how to move that kind of money around and the sorts of activities that the land bank would be doing. We have pretty high confidence that one way or the other we can figure out a way to get the land bank where it needs to be financially over time. Other areas where land banks are operating don't have that kind of resource available to it. So that would be probably the number one concern, is just making sure that it can become self-funding over time. I do want to also emphasize, and don't beat me up about this, KJ, we could withdraw if it didn't work out. So this isn't a forever and always kind of scenario. Any one of the participating communities, if they did not feel after a good while of giving it a fair shot that it was working for them, could decide to leave it. So, I don't know if you had more information you looked up.
I have one more question. Well, actually, two more. But so, Miles, how does this differ between the program that you and Colleen were working on? I think it's the home program, where we'll get funds for rehabs and stuff like that. Is this program different from that, or is it kind of the same?
It is different, though it could be similar to a program the land bank could develop. One of the options the land bank would have is to do whole house rehab work similar to that, though of course they might have more flexibility in how it's done. More often what we've seen in land banks that have had some sort of whole house rehab arrangement is like the example I shared, where the land bank itself doesn't do the rehab work. It simply sets up and facilitates someone else doing that work. So it's possible the city could have one program doing things one way, trying to achieve certain things through certain means. The land bank could have something else, a little bit different. Frankly, the more properties rehabbed, the better. So if multiple entities were doing that all at once, I think that would be good.
Okay. And I think KJ had mentioned that we have like 200 properties throughout the city.
Yeah, so when I've talked to the council before, you may recall that I've shared, it's gone down since we've sold some, so it's not quite that high, I'll proudly tell you. But we have about that many vacant lots that don't have like a clear development potential on our inventory, yeah.
So if I'm going back to your presentation, this is not only including the vacant lots, this is including some of the properties that are just on up for taxes.
Yep.
'Cause I know there's quite a few in my ward that are
Yep.
we don't know who owns them. They're just there.
Yep.
So well, that number should go up then instead of down, correct?
So that number is just to illustrate, that's just the number of vacant lots that the city itself owns. But there's plenty of other properties that are vacant or abandoned in some capacity that the city does not own, that are still problem properties that the land bank could help to address. So so I think the number you're talking about is like, what would be the total number of like quote unquote problem properties in the community? I can't quite quantify that, obviously, because it depends a little bit on how you would define that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the land bank and the arrangements that we've talked about for Rock Island would try to push at the beginning to help the city sell off all the land it has, because probably next to the county, which has taken possession of a large number of properties for lack of taxes, we're probably one of the largest landowners in that respect in the city.
So that priority will go first towards the properties that the city owns, and then secondary will be some of those just not ones and twosies, but those that are just out there. Those that we don't know who owns them, but they're, in a worse state than anything else in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a mix, right? So the goal of that service agreement would not necessarily be that the land bank, when it's doing work for Rock Island, only do marketing of the vacant lots we own. But it's important that we prioritize that and say that a good chunk of, if not a majority of their time, should be spent on that, because that's land that's generating zero tax revenue right now that we know we can offload pretty quickly if someone is there to just help do all of the, for example, neighbor contacts that need to be done, right? So if someone could just help do literally the contacting and say, did you know the vacant lot next to you is owned by the city, and they'd happily sell it to you for a few $100? Oh, I had no idea. Well, here's the form, fill it out. If that could be something we got assistance with, we'd be able to sell quite a lot of them. It's just a question of time.
So one last comment or question. So with the properties that we know are, so I have a house in one of my ward, I mean, of course, there's tons of them, but a house that we don't know who owns it. I'm
Yep.
pretty sure it's probably up for taxes.
Yep.
How will we identify those properties? Are we sending someone out to identify these, or how does that happen?
So if you'll recall, we do have a foreclosed, vacant, and abandoned property registry.
Okay,
So if you have a property that you suspect falls into one of those categories, and the ordinance establishing that registry provides definitions of all three, you can forward that to the inspections division, who can go and take a look at it and make a determination if it would qualify for registering under one of those categories. If it's in any of those, there's a possibility that it would be a property that a land bank could intervene in, but it would, of course, depend on the unique circumstances. So obviously, there might be foreclosed properties that are not necessarily problem properties. They're just having a spot of trouble. There might be vacant properties, but they're otherwise in really good condition and they're not really blighted. If it's abandoned, though, out and out, that means that it's not secured, there's not a clear owner. Those would be the properties that one would think that the land bank would want to prioritize. And I can assure you, we have quite a few properties around the city, but certainly in your ward, that would qualify for registering as
We need to be
abandoned.
conscious of the time.
Yeah, with that, two quick comments. One,
sorry.
I love this idea. I want to support it entirely. I'm really hesitant about creating a new entity to do this work. We have Growth, we have Dari that have experience with land banking. I don't understand why all three of our communities don't just enter a service agreement with an entity like that. We don't
Yeah.
answer it now, we'll talk about this offline. But I see a lot of redundancy happening here, because now not only does Growth and Dari and the city and Project Now and Habitat for Humanity and blah, 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 have all of these separate programs with their own project, or construction managers and stuff like that. Now we're gonna create a new one? Well, why don't we just work with one of these existing entities to do the work of a land bank? Talk about this offline. Second, financing options. You had 3 listed there. Is a 4th one that staff has considered, and just answer yes or no, having our 3 communities establish real estate transfer taxes to fund this?
No.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Poulos? No. All right, you wanted to continue, go farther with it? You okay going, continue further?
I think it's worth looking into. I'm concerned that Rock Island gets its fair share. And is this going to be a continual obligation from Rock Island to continue that 30% or 40% funding each year? And how is that going to affect our tax base?
We can get out at any time if we want, but, okay?
Right now,
Thank
we
you.
have a proposed budget for 3 years that Miles can certainly share with you guys. We've only proposed it 3 years in Moline, you know. Kind of want to see where we're going with it. It's something new. If we do form the land bank, we will be the 9th one in the state of Illinois. Since we received the last grant in 2019, we just applied for another grant. They had some extra money at IDA, and they said if you got funded in round 2 of the land bank capacity, submit another application. We have money to pass out to you guys, so hopefully we're going to get some additional funding for the land bank. And then, like Miles said, when the next Strong Communities Property Grant opens up, Rock Island can apply, Moline can apply, and then the land bank can apply. And so we can all do that based on capacity to run those grants. So hopefully we'll all be awarded something. You know, right now, Rock Island has Strong Communities Property, and so does Moline. East Moline doesn't. But we would like to form this collaboration, this opportunity, and take it forward. But we'll get you that budget. I'm sorry, I can't find it on my phone.
We have 5 minutes before the next council meeting, or the council meeting, so.
We're good.
Everybody all right? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
For second, assume no discussion, roll call, please.
Alderperson Swanson,
yes.
Parker,
Aye.
Poulos,
Aye.
Healy,
Aye.
and Robinson.
All right.
Okay, motion
Thank you.
adjourned.
See everybody in about